Welcome to War Bios, the podcast that delves into the most pivotal conflicts in history, where strategy meets sacrifice and bravery is forged in the fire of battle. I'm your host, General Biography, and today we're embarking on an examination of one of the most decisive campaigns of World War II, the Battle of Guadalcanal. Located in the Solomon Islands, Guadalcanal was a remote and unforgiving environment that would become the stage for a clash of titans. The island's dense jungles, sweltering heat, and rugged terrain made it an ideal location for a defensive stronghold, but also a challenging environment for military operations. As we explore the origins of this pivotal conflict, let's set the stage by examining the events that led to the Japanese occupation of Guadalcanal. The story of Guadalcanal begins in the early months of 1942, when Japanese forces were expanding their empire across Southeast Asia and the Pacific. On January 23, 1942, Japanese troops landed on the island of Rabaul, located on the northeastern tip of New Britain, which would become a key base for their operations in the region. The capture of Rabaul provided the Japanese with a strategic location from which to launch attacks on Allied shipping and bases in the region. As the Japanese continued their push southward, they set their sights on the Solomon Islands, a chain of islands that stretched southeast from Rabaul. The Solomons were of great strategic importance, as they controlled the sea lanes between the United States and Australia. In April 1942, Japanese forces occupied the island of Tulagi, which is located just north of Guadalcanal. The occupation of Tulagi was followed by the construction of a seaplane base, which would provide the Japanese with a forward operating base for their naval aircraft. In June 1942, Japanese engineers arrived on Guadalcanal to begin construction of an airfield, which would later become known as Henderson Field. The airfield was intended to provide the Japanese with a strategic location from which to launch attacks on Allied shipping and bases in the region. However, the construction efforts were hindered by the lack of resources and infrastructure on the island. The Japanese occupation of Guadalcanal was not without its challenges. The island's rugged terrain and inhospitable climate made it difficult for the Japanese to establish a strong foothold. The dense jungles and steep hillsides limited their ability to construct roads and buildings, and the heat and humidity took a heavy toll on their troops. Despite these challenges, the Japanese remained determined to complete the airfield and make Guadalcanal a key part of their Pacific strategy. They brought in thousands of laborers from other parts of their empire to work on the construction project, including Koreans, Chinese, and indigenous peoples from other islands. As the summer of 1942 wore on, the Allies became increasingly aware of the Japanese presence on Guadalcanal and the potential threat it posed to their operations in the region. On July 6, 1942, a coast watcher named Martin Clements, who was stationed on Guadalcanal, reported that the Japanese were constructing an airfield on the island. This intelligence sparked concern among Allied leaders, who recognized the strategic importance of the Solomon Islands. On August 7, 1942, American Marines landed on the island shores, marking the beginning of a brutal and decisive campaign that would change the course of World War II. The battle for Guadalcanal was about to begin, pitting American forces against their Japanese counterparts in a struggle that would test the limits of endurance, strategy, and sacrifice. The battle-scarred landscape of Guadalcanal is about to come alive as we delve into the heart of this epic struggle. As the battle raged on, the Americans faced numerous challenges, from the unforgiving jungle terrain to the relentless Japanese counterattacks. The U.S. Marine Corps' 1st Division, led by Major General Alexander Vandegrift, had to adapt quickly to the harsh environment and the determined enemy they faced. The Marines established a defensive perimeter around Henderson Field, the airfield that would become a crucial strategic location in the battle. The Japanese, however, were not willing to give up without a fight. They launched a series of fierce counterattacks, including the Battle of the Tanaru River, where American forces repelled a massive Japanese assault, and the Battle of Edson's Ridge, also known as the Battle of Bloody Ridge, which saw some of the most intense fighting of the campaign. These battles were marked by brutal hand-to-hand combat, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. As the battle unfolded, the importance of Henderson Field became increasingly clear. The airfield allowed American aircraft to provide close air support to ground troops and to intercept Japanese planes attempting to bomb the island. The Japanese, aware of the airfield's strategic significance, launched repeated attacks on Henderson Field, including a massive bombing raid on October 14, 1942, which damaged the airfield and destroyed several American aircraft. Despite these challenges, the Americans continued to hold their ground, and by mid-October 1942, they had secured the surrounding area, including the nearby village of Kokumbona. The Japanese, however, still maintained a strong presence on the island, particularly in the northern sector, where they had established a series of fortified positions. The American victory at Guadalcanal was not just a result of military might, it was also a testament to the logistical and strategic efforts of the Allied forces. The U.S. Navy played a crucial role in supporting the Marines, providing naval gunfire, transporting troops and supplies, and protecting the island from Japanese warships. The Allies' ability to maintain a steady flow of supplies, including food, ammunition, and medical equipment, was critical to their success. One notable example of the logistical challenges faced by the Americans was the Cactus Express, a supply chain that involved transporting goods from ships offshore to the beaches of Guadalcanal using small boats and amphibious vehicles. This system allowed the Americans to maintain a steady flow of supplies despite the harsh conditions and Japanese interference. As the battle reached its climax, the Japanese launched a final, desperate attack on Henderson Field in mid-November 1942. The assault, known as the Battle of Mount Austin, was repelled by American forces, who had by then established a strong defensive position around the airfield. This marked a turning point in the battle, as the Japanese began to withdraw their forces from the island. By December 1942, the Americans had secured Guadalcanal, and the Japanese had evacuated their remaining troops. The battle had been one of the bloodiest and most grueling of the Pacific War, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. However, the American victory at Guadalcanal marked a significant turning point in the war, as it denied Japan a strategic foothold in the Solomon Islands and set the stage for the Allied advance up the island chain. The strategic implications of the Battle of Guadalcanal will become clear as we examine how this decisive victory set the stage for future Allied operations in the region. The American victory at Guadalcanal marked a significant turning point in the war, as it denied Japan a strategic foothold in the Solomon Islands and set the stage for the Allied advance up the island chain. The battle had been one of the bloodiest and most grueling of the Pacific War, with both sides suffering heavy casualties. The Americans lost over 7,000 men, while the Japanese suffered more than 19,000 casualties. As the Allies began to consolidate their gains, they faced the daunting task of rebuilding and securing the island. The U.S. military established a series of bases and outposts on Guadalcanal, including the iconic Henderson Field, which would become a crucial staging ground for future operations in the Pacific. The airfield was expanded and upgraded, allowing American aircraft to provide close air support to ground troops and to intercept Japanese planes attempting to bomb the island. The Battle of Guadalcanal also had significant strategic implications for the broader Pacific War. The victory denied Japan a vital airbase and prevented them from threatening the sea lanes between Australia and the United States. It also set the stage for the Allied advance up the Solomon Islands as American forces began to push northwards towards the Japanese stronghold of Rabaul. One notable example of the strategic implications of the Battle of Guadalcanal was the decision by Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, the commander-in-chief of the Japanese Combined Fleet, to withdraw his forces from the island. This decision marked a significant shift in Japanese strategy as they began to focus on defending their remaining strongholds in the Pacific rather than attempting to expand their territory. As the Allies continued to push forward, they faced numerous challenges, including the harsh jungle terrain and the determined enemy they faced. However, the victory at Guadalcanal had given them a crucial momentum, and they were able to build on this success as they advanced up the island chain. The Battle of Guadalcanal also had a profound impact on the U.S. military, as it highlighted the importance of logistical and strategic planning in modern warfare. The Cactus Express supply chain, which had played a critical role in supporting American forces during the battle, became a model for future operations in the Pacific. In the words of General Alexander Vandegrift, the commander of the U.S. Marine Corps' 1st Division, the Battle of Guadalcanal was a defining moment in the war, as it showed that we could adapt to the harsh conditions of the Pacific and overcome even the most determined enemy. This sentiment is echoed by historians today, who recognize the Battle of Guadalcanal as a pivotal moment in the Pacific War. The American victory marked a significant turning point in the war, setting the stage for future Allied operations in the Pacific and paving the way for the ultimate defeat of Japan. That's all for today's War Bios. Remember to like, share, and subscribe, and until next time, I'm General Biography, reminding you to keep marching toward victory.